Welcome to another episode of Stardust and Golden. I'm Tommy Sayers, and today we are going to talk about AOS systems for your boat. To give you an idea what AOS systems are, they are an oil-air separator system for older diesels, older inboards of gas or diesel in powerboats or sailboats. Before I get started, I want to tell you, I'm going to try to, and I know I say this in every video, I'm going to try to make it short, and I never do, but I'm going to try to keep it a short video. I'm going to give a demonstration of the AOS system that I'm building here at my house, in my lab, because they can be very expensive, okay? And for those that are sailing on a micro budget, if you really need to build one for your boat, or you want to build one for your boat, it's a lot cheaper. There's really simple ways to do it, much easier than what even I'm doing. I'm machining one on a lathe and everything, but you could make one of these out of PVC and some pipe. You really don't need a lot of any money at all to build one of these, especially if you're going to build just a catch can. Now, there's two systems. There's the AOS, which is the air oil separator system, which basically takes combustion gases from the crankcase of your engine, filters them out, separates the oil from the gases, puts the gases back into the intake, so they can be reburned through the exhaust and sent out into the atmosphere. Or there's a catch can, which basically does the same thing, except it doesn't put the oil back into the engine. It basically just stores it. So it's sort of like your water trap would be on your fuel system. It just kind of traps it and you drain it whenever it gets full. And that's the easier system. And mine's going to start out that way until I get it completed. I'm just building basically a catch can for the oil. And I'm going to have blueprints available, or actually just drawings available if somebody wants them. For the price of postage, I can send you some, and I'll leave my address at the end of the video. Anyways, if you have a newer modern engine or you're running outboards, this probably won't be a very useful video for you. The modern engines are all self-contained. They usually don't have open systems. Mine was an older boat. It's 36 years old, so it was just running. Basically, it was venting the engine into the bilge, which not only put oily residue in the bilge, it also created a very dangerous situation for long-term running of the engine. The problem with the older boats, if they weren't vented to the outside atmosphere, if they were an open system and they weren't vented to the outside atmosphere, it could be very hazardous to the health of anybody on board. If you're in a seaway and you're trying to make a long trek of 3 or 4 hour run and there's sick people in the bilge, it could become very tragic. Those gases actually contain hydrocarbons, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, water particles, oil aerosols. There's sulfur. There's all kinds of things in fuel you do not want to breathe in. It can be deadly. So for short periods of time, yeah, there's not a lot of fumes coming out of the crankcase of an engine unless it's really, really worn out engine. On a newer boat, you won't have that issue. But there is enough gases in there to cause harm over a long extended period of time. And the more worn out it is, naturally, the more gases will come out of it. So be aware of that. If you have an old engine that's been run for a lot of hours, it will produce a lot of gases from the crankcase breathing system. So if you, in a worst case scenario, at least vent it to the atmosphere, not inside the boat. Here in Cleveland recently, the summer of 2001, we had a boat circling out in Lake Erie. When the Coast Guard approached it, they found 3 people on board, 2 adults, 1 child, carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, I don't have the details. I don't know if it was, an exhaust leak, if it was, an air pressure system from the crankcase that went bad. I have no idea. But it was 3 people who lost their lives because of carbon monoxide. So you want to check everything constantly on your boat. Exhaust, especially the exhaust tubes. And if you have a wet exhaust, always check your clamps constantly. Make sure none of them ever snapped open, because they will snap open sometimes. Clamps will just let go if the screw rusts out. Even though most clamps are stainless steel, sometimes the screws aren't. And they're prone to being tightened down. They're under a lot of pressure when they're all tightened down. When that screw finally disintegrates, they snap open. And it could compromise the integrity of the system. And if it leaks, well, you'd have carbon monoxide and HC in the cabin of your boat. It could be very tragic. Okay, the AOS system I'm building, I'm doing for that reason, safety, mostly safety, and I would like to have my engine running without putting oil into any kind of catch can or into the bilge. You know, the separation of the oil right now, it was just kind of draining the fumes and the oil right into the bilge. Was not a pretty sight, and nobody wants oil, you know, in the bilge. It smells, it's dirty, it's not healthy. So, you know, if you have an older engine, I would highly recommend either purchasing a good AOS system or a catch can even. Something that will just recirculate the air from the crankcase back into the intake. Now, crankcase pressure is actually coming from the combustion. It's usually running right past the rings or the ring gap. There's always a little bit. There's never 100% containment of combustion. It cannot be done. It's against the laws of physics. There's always some going past those rings in some form or another, depending on how old or how used the engine is. That gas has got to be reburnt or sent somewhere. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have some kind of safety net for it. It's going to be there. So there's three types of systems. You have an open system, which basically just takes the fumes from the atmosphere or from the crankcase of the engine and vents them into the atmosphere, whether it's outside the boat or inside. You have the filtered open system, which filters out the oil, because there's always oil particles and water particles too from combustion. You want to separate those and then blow it into the atmosphere. Now, most heavy equipment run that kind of system, and a lot of trucks today that are on the road, actually, the EPA lets trucks, heavy equipment trucks with turbos and blower systems, they could sneak by the EPA regulations and actually vent to the atmosphere as long as it's filtered. Since 2007, I believe they were able to do that. Reason for that is because it creates, on the diesels with the turbochargers, it can create a lot of what they call crust or flaky deposits, which can, you know, cause a lot of harm to the engine and the economy, the fuel economy, and the efficiency of the engine. So they're letting that slip by on some vehicles, and most all heavy equipment's run into the atmosphere, but boats shouldn't be. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in the cockpit or down in the cabin. So, you know, some system is better than no system at all. Anyways, you know, another thing you want to be careful of, and AOS systems and catch cans can fail. So you have to have these built with some level of, you should have some sort of pop-off valve or some safety feature on it. Something that can release pressure if need be. You don't want one to all of a sudden fill up with oil and have no way to release the pressure, because it could blow seals out of your engine and cause, you know, engine damage. It could get costly. And the old Porsches were famous for that, the Boxsters and the Carreras. They would go into a negative pressure, an actual negative pressure. I believe it was up to 40 inches of water on the level of low pressure in the engines from failed AOS systems, which caused a lot of damage. It's sort of in the same area as overfilling. You never want to overfill your engine with oil. When it gets into these AOS systems or catch cans, they can overfill and start flooding your engine out. You do not want that. That could be really, really bad and expensive. I've seen that in the automobile industry, really common. A lot of car owners think, yeah, oil's good. Some oil's good, more is better. That's not the case at all. If anything, a little less oil in your engine, not too much. Too much oil can cause you lots of damage. Oil, okay, your engine basically is 100% lubricated by oil, but 100% of your oil is not for lubrication. It could be on an air-cooled engine, the air-cooled automobiles from way back in the day, and the air-cooled motorcycles, 40% of that oil was for cooling purposes. 60% was for lubrication. Now, in your modern cars, that's a lot less. The ratio is much different. But you still have a lot of that oil in there for cooling. Heck, in the 60s and 70s, we used to pull a cord out of our engines every winter just to get the engine up to operating temperature sooner. And they still lasted forever. They never lacked lubrication We were just keeping the cars a little warmer. So be really careful about putting oil in your engine. Never, never, ever overfill it. You're much better off. It's less dangerous of a situation for you to underfill the engine than it is to overfill it. 9 times out of 10. Don't be fooled by the, armchair experts who tell you, oh yeah, a little more oil is okay. You don't want to miss lubrication because they don't realize that some of that's in there for cooling purposes. And yeah, you want your engine to be cool, but you're still safer with less than more. And when I mean less, I mean a small percentage. You don't want to be, if it's a 5-quart engine, you don't want to be 2.5 quarts low. That's a serious problem there, especially in a rocking boat where your sumps, sometimes getting air at that point. All right, so back to the AOS. There's many ways to do this, many ways to build them. I'm going to go ahead and I'll show what I've got, on the machinery downstairs. And if anybody's interested, I can easily send them a drawing on it. Have some sort of backup system, some sort of warning system on it that tells you, hey, I'm overfilled. Your engine basically should never put out more than about 6 psi maximum in pressure on these old diesels. I have an old 32 horse diesel that's universal. And, these old things, they shouldn't really put out more than 6. And your modern engines probably put out less. Okay. So you want to make sure that that's kept low. So if you build an AOS system or a catch can, make sure you have some kind of relief valve on it. So if all fails, you don't overpressurize your engine. It could be bad. So we're going to take a break right here, and then I will take this down to the lab and we'll see what we can do with the machines. Okay, welcome back. We're in the lab now, and I'm going to give a little demo here on what I'm building for the AOS system. Again, this is something you don't really need to machine out. I mean, I did because I had some of the equipment, but you can actually make these out of, you can make them out of piping or PCV. PCV obviously is the better choice because it won't rust out or rot. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. And again, remember that ideally, you should never see more than about 6 psi in these things. So if you have a pop-off valve on them that would bust at 7 or 8 or 10 pounds, you should be fine with whatever you use. Anyways, this I used was a thick-walled aluminum pipe. This is about 9.5 inches, 3.5 inches wide. And what we're going to do here is I machined some caps with a groove in them, and I'm going to put a gasket in these. And then there's going to be 4 stainless steel threaded rods. I'm going to thread the ends of these about maybe 1 inch on each end, and they will hold the caps together on this thing, the bottom and the top. This is actually the bottom here. You can see I have a valve on it. That's going to be the oil drain. That's what will feed back into the engine when it's all done. So that gets bolted together like that. What we're going to do is put the incoming from the engine will be a copper tube. Well, it already is a copper tube. What we're going to do is run that into the side here, and then there'll be another copper tube on the inside. There'll be a threaded joint in the middle. And we're going to circle it, maybe about 3 or 4 turns, just about 2 inches down. So we'll run that, and that will be kind of the cooling system. Once it cools around, the moisture from the liquid water and the oil will, evaporate into a liquid form from the atomized gases that are coming in here. That pipe will go down through and extend and pass through a filter, which I'm going to use bronze wool. It'll just be bronze wool, brass wool, if you will. And then a small round metal plate in here with lots of holes in it that will become the baffle plate. So, and everything will 1/3 of the way. So after that, it will just be oil cavity. So if I use it for a catch can, I could fill it up that much with oil, and that could probably take years to do that if, the engine's tight. So what happens is once the oil condenses and goes to the bottom of this, all the gases can still escape up through the baffle, through the brass wool, and they'll go out a pipe on the top of this to the air intake manifold. Or in my case, it's going to be like the spark arrestor box. There is really no spark arresting on a diesel, but they still have like an air filter box on the front of the air intake. I'm going to feed the gases from this right into there. But without the oil, I won't be burning too rich. I'm going to put a PCV system on here, only because, like at idle, we don't want to just freely be running the gases back into the engine at all times, because it could go into a lean situation. If we're sitting at idle for a long period of time, and this is pumping a bunch of air and unburned gases and the gases that were in the, whatever gases were in the engine crankcase at the time, back into the air intake, that could lean, since it's not fuel and it's not burning or combustion, it's not part of the combustion, it could go into a lean situation. So we're going to regulate this with a PCV valve, and that will help not running it too lean during the idle circuit or any other circuit, since it needs X amount of pressure in order to operate. So anyways, I'm going to put a drawing for this up, and I'll put my address. It's actually my address for this is going to be in the comments, but I'll put it up on the screen. So if anybody wants a diagram, they can just kind of, you can design your own. You know, you can kind of look at the diagram, design one like this, or just make one out of a big PVC pipe, glue some caps on it, put some pipes in it. Theoretically, it should work just fine. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me in the comment sections or email me. My email address is posted too. And we're going to be doing a lot more projects in the next 2 or 3 weeks because it's springtime. We're getting the boat ready to put back together. So we're going to be doing 2 hatchery builds. That'll be in the next week. That'll probably be the next video. And we're going to be doing some engine work. We're going to be doing some bilge painting, and we're going to be doing some refurbishing the fuel tanks, filtering out all the old fuel, taking the tanks out, cleaning them, and going through them to make sure that they can be salvaged and just cleaned up and redone and put back in the boat. If not, we might have to have new tanks made. We're not sure yet, but they look like they're in fairly good shape, considering the boat sat 25 years, was only used 9 years, so I think we're going to be fine. Anyways, those are all video series coming up really soon, and within a month or so, hopefully we're making videos of sailing the thing. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, and we got a lot more good videos coming up, so please stay tuned with us. And also, if I can plug some of my friends, earlier on this video, I was wearing a shirt that came from a dear friend of mine who was one of the first people I met in the sailing channels of YouTube. So if you can give her a visit, she's got a great series of videos out. Wonderful videos. Her name's Nicole, and it's Saddles and Sails on YouTube. Awesome, awesome videos. So anyways, with that, we will close. Thank you for watching again, and I'll post some information in the comment section where you can get a hold of me if you want to make one just like this one, or at least have the design so you can come up with your own. Thank you again for watching. Thank you very much.